Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the trade rumors from the NHL trade deadline. Things that were discussed but never happened, some of which may be revisited. Some deals we might see in the offseason, possibly at the NHL draft. Plus we have a variety of other news items to take a look at today as well, including some injury updates, a couple of updates as well from other franchises. We actually have a couple of sad stories to discuss around the league. We have a goalie goal in the American Hockey League and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here, Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we've already been NHL things to discuss here today. First up, we actually had yet another goalie goal. This one was not in the NHL, it was actually in the American Hockey League. Carolina Hurricanes prospect goaltender Peter Kochetkov, of course, has spent a fair decent amount of time in the NHL over this year and last, has scored an American Hockey League goal as a goaltender. So not something you see very often. He had quite the celebration as well. So certainly congratulations to him. Not something you see very often. Staying with goalies for a second, not really too newsworthy per se, but Elias Sorokin, goalie from the New York Islanders, of course he's been in the NHL for quite some time now. His dad's finally been able to come over. I'm not sure what was holding things up before, but was finally able to come over for the very first time and see his son play today. So it's certainly nice to see after being in the NHL for a few years now. We also have some injury updates, including Anaheim Ducks forward Adam Henrique, who was a player that was generating some interest around the trade deadline. There was a lot of speculation he could be dealt. Apparently he's going to be out for about 5 or 6 weeks with an MCL strain, so that's certainly not good news for him. William Carrier, the Vegas Golden Knights, is also out an indefinite period of time with a lower body injury. The Toronto Maple Leafs have sent back goaltender Joseph Woll to the American Hockey League and have activated Matt Murray. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, they left just enough available cap space to activate Murray. If they want to sign top prospect Matthew Knies, who's expected to, he's heavily considered leaving college at the end of his college season, maybe sign with the Leafs to get a few regular season games, and at the end of the year possibly be available for playoffs as well, then that's something that we just might see. So we'll see Murray and the Leafs play the Canucks tonight. As I record this video, the Leafs were down 4-1. So we'll see how things go for the Leafs moving forward. Now, something you don't see very often is head coaches, kind of sitting players on the bench for extended times, especially big top players, multiple players in one team, one game. And we've seen that today with Tampa Bay Lightning head coach John Cooper benching Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, and Nikita Kucherov. None of them seen a shift in the third period, even though the team was trailing in their game against the Buffalo Sabres. So certainly, when he was asked about this post-game, he gave a pretty good interview, I thought, some good quotes. Basically said, 99% of the time when you're down, those guys are the guys you want to go to produce and, get the team back in it. And they quite often play a big role in helping the team do that. But you just felt today they just were not, at their best. They just were not where they needed to be. So the other players were better situated, better positioned to be able to, get the team back in it. I mean, I'll tell you, it takes a lot of guts for a coach, especially, when you're talking not just one player, but you're talking about 3 all-star elite level players. That's it's quite the risk he took, but he's also been with these guys for a long time. Obviously sending a message. It's not about just that particular game. Obviously trying to get those guys going for the future. The Lightning have not played well as of late, going into the home stretch here of the season. The last probably 3 or 4 weeks, the Lightning have not looked good at all. And I must say, if they don't get their act together, they will be in trouble when they get to the playoffs. I think that's a fair statement for sure, but not something you see very often like that, with that many players being benched, especially teams that are loaded with that kind of talent, like the Lightning are, for sure. Now, of course, we also, like I said, have a couple of sad stories we want to send out our thoughts and prayers to a couple of NHL people, including Anaheim Ducks assistant coach Mike Stollers, who was recently announced that he's been diagnosed with cancer. He's got a stage 3 melanoma in the lymph node. So certainly want to wish him well, wish him the best with all his treatments, and hopefully he wins his battle here. But the message he had was basically, trying to stay positive and spread awareness, saying that if you are not feeling right, if something feels off, or you just, make sure you get yourself checked. If anything is not right and you ignore it, it could lead to a serious diagnosis, serious consequence. So certainly, get in to see your doctor, and hopefully you can avoid that and catch things early. So yeah, if you do have something going on, you have typically a better long-term outlook. Now the other sad news is not of that nature, but it's still a health issue, and it's Assistant General Manager of the Calgary Flames, Chris Snow. Many of you may know his story. His wife Kelsey is quite active on social media, kind of trying to spread awareness of his condition, which he's battling ALS, which is a horrible, horrible disease. We know that Chris Snow has had his struggles off and on. He's well ahead of any kind of expectancy when it comes to life expectancy and what he's been able to do. Like, he's far exceeded, I think, doctors' expectations. He's had the disease for well over 3 years. And apparently he had to be hospitalized again on, I think it was the night before the trade deadline, so it would have been like Thursday evening. And even then, he made sure his wife got a message to GM Brad Treliving saying, sorry, Tree, like, I got to get to the hospital. Like, the Flames are extremely supportive of Chris Snow. And Treliving made mention of it in his post-deadline media availability as well. He's been through so much, and he's, I followed them online and seen the story for a few years now, and I've seen how he's changed and the deterioration and everything in the muscles, and it's really a sad state of affairs. And so this goes to show, if you're having a bad day and you think that things are horrible, you could be going through that. It could always be worse, and I certainly wouldn't wish it on anybody. So, hopefully Chris is okay and, can get back to his job duties and get out of the hospital here in the not too distant future. They've been in and out of the hospital numerous times, and we'll certainly hope that, that we wish him the best, because it's one of those things, that there's not going to be a cure, unfortunately. You just hope that he can battle through and have more time with his loved ones. He's got a couple of small young children and his wife, and I'm sure they've been dealing with this a long time. It's quite exhausting, but they got to do what they can to help their husband and their dad live as long as he can and have better quality of life as he can. So certainly want to wish Chris, as well as Mike Stollers, the best, and keep them in our thoughts here as they go through some pretty serious health battles. Now, on to some other stuff here around the league, some trade talk about some NHL trades of things that did not happen. A couple of rejected deals. For example, further talk today about the JT Miller, Vancouver Canuck, Pittsburgh Penguin connection. A lot more details. I know Elliot Friedman made mention of this as well, about the talk from basically from Vancouver and Patrick Alvin. Jim Rutherford's essentially saying that they really didn't have serious offers, or that the conversations that a lot of people were alluding to didn't really take place the way that they say and said they would. And they said that they're really, that's not what they're hearing at all. That there was definitely cases of Vancouver reaching out, initiating these conversations as well. And that it's quite likely that there needed to be a third team involved, because as we reported before, the big holdup here that Vancouver had on a Miller conversation regarding trade was that they wanted a centerman back because they don't want to rebuild. They've made this clear, which I don't understand. The direction of this team seems to be all over the place. The deals they make, to me, just half the time don't make any sense. They don't want to rebuild, but yet, they have these young group of core players that they're, between Pettersson and Hughes and Demko, which are still all fairly young, and you got Besser, who's, debatable what his future's like, but he's still fairly young, a good player. And then they've got Miller, who they signed over Horvat, and this doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, a trade to Pittsburgh might make sense, but essentially that's the holdup. Pittsburgh wanted to offer more of a futures-based package, and Vancouver didn't want to do that, so they rejected the deal. But it's believed that there were some conversations, or there could be conversations furthering into the offseason to have maybe a three-team deal where the Canucks can move Miller to Pittsburgh. Maybe the Canucks get a center from a different team, and then, of course, a combination of Pittsburgh, Vancouver, and the third team, there could be some other assets swapped around, and likely including future-based stuff, whether it be prospects or picks in some capacity of that nature. Exactly hard to say how exactly it'd be structured, but it'd be something along those lines with Miller going to the Penguins. So we'll see. I mean, Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts pod that came out today does seem to think that there's a real good possibility that they will revisit these talks, because obviously Miller's no trade clause does kick in after July 1. So if they do get a deal done after the draft or anytime in the offseason beforehand, then he won't have to waive. So as much as there's some denial and some downplay on some of the Vancouver side of things. I think there's a real decent shot here that the Penguins will revisit this and see. But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked by then, too, if Pittsburgh ends up missing the playoffs, if they might even end up with a different GM or something. I wouldn't be shocked. And that front net could have a whole different philosophy, so we'll have to see where that goes. Montreal Canadiens did entertain trading Joel Edmondson, but as we talked about before, the appetite to trade him was not overly high, and they were going to have to get a really good return before they would pull the trigger. It is believed now, what we're hearing, especially through Montreal media, that the asking price was a first-round pick. And where he had been off injured for so long and only got back, and I think he only played the one game before the deadline, that teams were sort of not willing to pony up that kind of offer for Edmondson's services. So, I mean, he still had term in his deal, wasn't a pending UFA, wasn't an absolute necessary thing that they had to do, but essentially, you know, it's something that that's the asking price, so that's why it never came to be. Apparently, Carolina was in on Max Domi. Of course, he ended up going to the Dallas Stars, so no big surprise there. There was some reports about the Hurricanes being interested in Domi. Those appear to be legit. Carolina Hurricanes GM Don Waddell also confirmed that his media availability that they were in on another significant trade, and that, of course, unfortunately, they were not able to make it happen, but it's believed that he's probably referring to Timo Meier and up front. And speaking of Timo Meier, there's also reports from the 32 Thoughts segment on Hockey Night in Canada today as well, that the Edmonton Oilers and Ken Holland were very interested in Timo Meier and did make a legit offer as well, but it was going to be more for a rental situation and they would figure it out later. So it wasn't really a scenario where the Oilers thought they could sign him, at least not without making other substantial changes to their roster, right? So it's complicated for sure, and the Oilers were certainly going to see what they could do. But never got too serious, but they were certainly interested, had their conversations, and were apparently rumored to have at least made a legit offer. So they were certainly very much in the mix there. And they also certainly were legit serious on talking about Erik Karlsson. I don't think things got too far along there because of the nature of the contract and the money in term on that deal, but they are certainly very much interested. And they also talked on the 32 Thoughts segment as well that the Maple Leafs also internally discussed Erik Karlsson. But again, it was going to be way too complicated from a salary cap perspective, so they never really pursued it, and things never really got anything near being close or serious or anything like that. But obviously shows you that they are indeed definitely interested, and I wonder, depending on how things go in the playoffs, if they do shake things up or go in maybe a bit of a different direction, would they reconsider that for the summer? That's something that could be very, very interesting as well. So we'll have to see longer term what happens to Karlsson in his future, but certainly a couple of Canadian teams there that are definitely interested in his services should he get traded out of San Jose into the offseason or whenever the time does come. Also some talk from Elliot Friedman about Kevin Hayes in Philadelphia. Of course, he never ended up getting moved, but he does believe that the Columbus Blue Jackets make a lot of sense for a potential landing spot and could be a place where we see Hayes traded to in the offseason. There is also a possibility Hayes could be a buyout candidate. Either way, I don't see him returning to Philly. I think there's a pretty good chance that they do move on from him in one way or another. But I would think if the Flyers are able to make a trade, that to me would make a lot more sense. Even if they had to retain some salary on the contract, it would still save them a ton of money than doing a buyout where they'd have some form of a cap hit for twice the period of time that's remaining on that contract. So could Kevin Hayes end up being a Blue Jacket in the offseason? I think it's a real possibility. It would reunite him with his former college teammate, Johnny Gaudreau. So that could be a good combination, fun to watch as well. And Columbus is going to have lots of openings given how this team has changed and, through the deadline and through the season. And, of course, with all the changes they're making there. So it does make some sense. It's not really going to get them into contention that much faster, but it does have another veteran to help with that scenario. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's almost trades as well as the other news from around the league. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.